What's happening, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Austin, your host for the One Last Hit podcast. And thank you so much for tuning in and joining me today, Miss Colleen Clifford. Colleen is a best-selling author. Man, she does all sorts of shit, honestly. We're gonna dive into Colleen's story. She has a very unusual occupation that I've been watching her on Instagram post videos on, and I can't wait to talk about that too. But Colleen, thank you so much for being here.
I'm really happy to be here. I've really been looking forward to this, especially after I read your book, by the way, One Last Hit, which I highly recommend to your listeners if they have not listened. I listened to the audiobook because I don't really have time to read, but I really enjoyed it. It was phenomenal. Yeah. I'm so impressed you're here and doing what you're doing. It's really such a inspiration.
Oh man. Well, Colleen and I connected over email, I think initially. Was that right? And then started following each other mutually. You're like one of the few guests I've had where I have a prior relationship with, which is just awesome. But I only know snippets of your story. I don't think I've gotten your book in the mail yet. I have ordered it though. So forthcoming, right?
Yes. Well, it's available on Amazon now. Maybe you ordered the Kindle version without knowing it. I don't know, possibly. The paperback, the soft copy is going to be available like in the next any minute as we speak. But Amazon kind of lags with, it's a process. So anyways, it's on Amazon right now, available.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to get it and read it. And
thank you.
So okay, let's I want to get into your story a little bit if you don't mind. So take me back. What was it like being little Colleen? What was your childhood like?
Well, there's 5 in my family. I'm number 4. And my parents are no longer young, but they were young parents at the time. My mom's first child, she had at 18, and she had 4 in a row, basically. So I was number 4. So by the time I came along, my parents were pretty happy because they were going to take a pause. So I was a welcomed child. And then my little brother came along 5 years after me, and I didn't really welcome that, but he took my spotlight, right? So, but anyway, just having a bigger family, as you know, I can imagine being the parent on that end. But yeah, as a kid, you have to learn to share. You don't get everything you want, right in that moment. And so my childhood was great. I mean, we had some normal dysfunction of having a huge household where you can't just be perfect all the time, and it's okay. I have a beautiful family. So none of my issues, I don't believe, stemmed from that. I mean, any family issues I had, I worked through with counseling and therapy. And so I have a wonderful relationship with my family.
Awesome. And I know, so in your bio and reading it, you were a binge drinker, and you moved into a lot of these behaviors that I am very familiar with. So how does it progress from here? Like, where does it go?
Well, I was an athlete as well. So I didn't, in high school, so I didn't go down that direction of drinking because of my sport was soccer. But it was when I was 19, I started hanging out with college kids because I have older siblings, and going to their parties. And so I started drinking at 19. And then I had a major event happen. Something happened to me that I share in my book that was so shaming and profound. I think I had some post-traumatic stress disorder. And I internalized a story. I created this story that I was unlovable and nobody would want me. I'd never get married. I'd never have children, and I would never talk about it. And little did I know, and I discovered all this just recently. I'm in my 60s. And so I lived my whole adult life with this unconscious belief, not knowing that it was running the show for me. And until I started to first I had to quit my drinking. That was the first, right? And then I started looking at why was I drinking in the first place. And I have a lot of reasons why I was drinking. It filled a lot of my needs that we all think addicts, we all have our reasons we do what we do. But it really came down to this moment when this happened. And that's the moment where it all began, where my story began. And it just ran the show. I started to do things to reinforce my story that I was unlovable.
Mm.
I'd put myself in risky positions. I'd drink and almost die. I should be dead a number of times. I think I was testing death. I wasn't suicidal, but I think I didn't care because someone recently said to me on a podcast, and it was the first time I ever said it out loud, which was like a few months ago. And he said, "Wow, that was a death sentence." I was like, "Oh my God, you hit the nail on the head." And so I was living with this self imposed death sentence for
Mm.
years. Yeah.
Wow. So you had an event happen, and you mentioned shame. And for anyone, listening, like what does shame mean to you? Like how, I know there's the dictionary definition, but like we all carry it in kind of a different way. What does shame mean to you?
Shame means to me that I internalized this thing that happened to me, by the way, and somebody that I admired and held in esteem said some things to me, reacted to me in such a way that I internalized it like I'm a disgrace.
Mm.
I took that reaction as, "Oh my God, I'm piece of dirt. I'm garbage. Nobody's going to want me. Who's going to want to marry me?" It's just something I internalized because I didn't have the tools at the time to just basically tell this person. It was just one incident, right? I didn't know how to question it. Like, wait a minute, maybe this person's wrong, or it's but as far as shame goes, I internalized that I was not worthy, that I was
Mm.
unlovable, that it's a feeling.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
know that feeling so incredibly well. Like when I'm walking around in shame, it's the energy leaves my body. I feel like that thing I'm ashamed of is tattooed right on my forehead. Everybody I talk to, I think feels exactly the same way about me that I currently feel. I have no ambition to strike up relationships, right? It's like all these, it's almost like I put on glasses that just kind of gray the color out of my world. That's what shame feels like for me. And then, but on the other side of that, right, that shame narrative, at least in my experience, were always what we would call old ideas. They were ideas that I had formed about myself that were never true, but I had built a foundation on top of those old ideas. And when they shattered, it was like, I somebody solved a problem for me that I just didn't realize I had. And I don't know if that
Hmm.
was your experience as well, but shame's a big deal.
It is. I call it the story beneath the behavior now because we all have our behaviors of coping with our experiences in life. And the the happy experiences we usually cope on a positive level for ourselves. It's the shameful experiences and that we tend to really harm ourselves. And like you, Austin, my story was not true, but I believed it for years.
Mm. So where
Yeah.
does your story, you know, where does your story go from here? When did you actually quit drinking?
Just 5 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so from age 19 until, if you're in your 60s, so your
60.
late 50s, yeah, 60, you were binge drinking. And tell me, what did life look like when that was going on? I know that you lost a husband, is that correct?
I
As well?
did.
Can you
Yes.
tell me about that?
Yeah. So I'll tell you about that first, I guess. So he died 14 years ago. Rest in peace, Scott,
Mhm.
to alcohol related suicide.
Mm.
A- And so what that means is he was drunk when he died.
Okay.
And the reason that is a thing is because alcohol and suicides, most suicides percentage wise, a lot of them are alcohol related, meaning alcohol was in the picture when they died. So alcohol has a tendency to push people over the edge who are depressed. As we know,
Mhm.
alcohol is a depressant. So without the booze, he might have survived, is basically what I like to believe. So at the time I wasn't drinking. And so here's the thing with binge drinking is that you can deny it being a problem for me anyways, because as a binge drinker, my story is different than yours in a sense. And other people I listen to that have really that hit rock bottom and have really a real journey in their addiction. Mine, the binge drinking, you can deny it being a problem because I didn't drink all the time. I didn't drink every day, and even when I drank, it wasn't always a problem. And
Mm,
so the binge drinking, we just call it partying, right? Maybe like a football game. You go to a football game, you're with your friends, you might drink too much the next day, you have a hangover and you're like, oh, wow, I should watch it. But that is considered a binge incident. If you're drinking, for a guy, it's 5 or more drinks. For a girl, it's 4 or more drinks in an occasion.
mhm.
And that's pretty easy to do, right? At a party.
Yeah, very easy. And so when you talk about binge drinking, would you go on multiple days, or would you drink every now and again, but when you drank, you overdid it?
I would not go on multiple days because I would wake up hungover and I would say, I'm taking a break.
Mm, okay,
and
gotcha.
and yeah, and so I think that's why a lot of people don't consider this behavior as a problem or alcohol use disorder, because you're not continuing the binge.
Mm. Well, you seem to have some sanity about you on the other side of it to say, wow, that was not something, like where, and this is why I'm curious about it, because in my case, right, if I alter my mind, and it,
Hmm.
it can be it can be man, I have tried every which way to get high successfully. Man, I'll tell you, if I could do it, man, when I first got sober, I would have given up my left arm. I promise, not my right arm, but my left arm for sure. And but what happens is I start having this uncontrollable obsession, right? If
And it's that wild card that can flip over when you're not prepared. Nobody plans to start partying and say, tonight's the night I'm going to destroy everything, or tonight's the night I'm going to die. It's just happens when we binge drink and we don't know which way it's going to go. And, I think for some people, it's a wake up call. Like, I got scared straight. That's why I quit. I did not hit rock bottom, thank God. And but I drove home drunk my last binge, and it was because I was not preparing to binge. It was just what I said to you. I did not start that day thinking I was going to drive home drunk.
Mhm.
And I have so much gratitude, and I apologize to anyone out there who's been affected by a drunk driver. And I donate to Mothers Against Drunk Driving. In fact, my book's proceeds are going to Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. So, but I said a prayer. you know I didn't think I was drunk when I started driving. I realized when I saw a double line I was, and I said, God, get me home, and I swear to you I will quit. And I got myself scared straight, and I quit. The next day I went on my journey. It wasn't just like that. I mean, quitting is a process in itself, but I'm very proud that I kept my promise. And I know how lucky I am. I could have destroyed my life. I could have destroyed somebody's life. I didn't even get a ticket. I could have woke up the next day not telling a soul and just thought, oh, wow, man, I was really lucky. I drove home drunk. I can't believe it. Shit. God, how did I do that? I'm never doing that again. And then start drinking again in 3 weeks and maybe drive home drunk again. I
Yeah,
mean, drinking and driving is still out. The statistics show it's still alive and well. So people ask me how I could do it. And I said, in your drunk brain, you're not thinking right, right? Nobody
totally.
does.
My wife and I joke sometimes. We watch this show. What were we watching? Oh, it's called $1 Million Nannies. Like, she loves smut, and because she is the boss, I watch smut with her. And and she looks at this girl that's all sloppy drunk, and she says, "Why don't you just do some fucking cocaine like a lady? You know, like get yourself sobered up by doing cocaine." And I just cackled. I think it was a freaking hilarious line, man. But I get it. I get it. And
Yeah.
I want to call back on, if you don't mind, I know you
Oh,
went through a
no.
tremendously traumatic time with what happened to your husband. And I'm curious about the years leading up to that. Like, what did that look like?
Yeah, the years leading up to that, that was in my, well, he died, let's see, 14 years ago. So, like 2011. And
Mm-hmm.
years up to that, we weren't partying crazy. He wasn't depressed when I married him. I mean, he fell into depression with a couple. His parents died like back to back, and
Mm,
he fell into depression. He didn't know how to handle, and started drinking. So, and I didn't know how to handle that. I had no experience around depression, and so it just spiraled. And so, life was amazing during that chapter. It was in my 50s, or excuse me, my 40s. He had a horse tour company in Sedona. We had horses, and it was just magical time until his parents died. And his mom died first, and then his father died. And then we moved to Utah we thought a move would help him recalibrate, and it didn't go as planned.
yeah. And how did you cope around that time? Like, what did it look like for you when that all happened?
It was almost surreal. Like, you never expect someone you love, or anyone. I mean, I think a lot of us have known someone who's died by suicide, and it's always shocking.
Yeah.
And most of the time, you're like, "Wow, I had no clue." And so that is another level of grief. I still can't wrap my head around it, but I've learned to live with it. And it was insane, in the sense of your whole world is flipped up in the air, and the pieces are just floating all around you, dropping like bombs around you. I realized that nothing's in my control. I had to let go, not only of my idea of relationships and pain internally, but just our animals. I had to rehome some of the find homes for some of the horses, the dogs, the cat. I mean, I lost basically everything that I thought was mine,
Mm,
was no longer mine. And so I realized, wow, life is just really what we carry around here in our bodies. We really, like,
yeah.
think of people who lose their homes in fires, or their whole family dies in a car accident. I mean, it's just, it's pretty heavy thinking, and we don't want to wish that on anyone. But when you get that experience, you just kind of realize that sometimes we're striving for the wrong things in life, and what really does matter.
Wow. That's powerful. And as you were talking, I love going down the I don't know that I would call it the supernatural rabbit hole, but like the rabbit hole of what happens after death, or like what are
Hmm.
these mediums who are talking to spirits, and like all these different things that some people look at and they go, phooey, whatever. But man, I've gone down those rabbit holes, and I believe there's when we lose somebody, right? I don't think they go anywhere. I think their bodies don't exist any longer. But my wife has this awesome thing that she does. Her father passed away of brain cancer in 2018. It was really sudden and traumatic. He died
Mm.
like 8 weeks after we found out. And when we have cardinals fly into our backyard, she'll say things like, "Oh, there's Grandpa Rusty," which she'll say to my kids, which was her dad. And there's a while I used to think, you know, that's so stupid. You know, Back in the immature me, I was like, "Oh, that's so stupid." But then I started realizing, like, who's the stupid one? Because she's the one here having an experience with her father. Like,
Mm-hmm.
whether I can prove that that's true or not is irrelevant to the fact that her life is improved in a remarkable way just because of some recognition that she has. And I'm like, wow, that's absolutely beautiful. And I started digging down the rabbit hole of like what happens after death. And I don't know, man. I could talk to you about this honestly for hours because it's so intriguing to me. But
Me
I do think
too.
our souls continue on as soon as when our bodies turn off. That's just my own
Mm-hmm.
belief.
Oh,
So
I'm 1,000% with you there, especially after my experience. And can I share a bird story with you to help maybe validate your wife's?
please. Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's not cardinals, but I've always been spiritual prior to this. So I already believed that there was life after death, and our anyways. So I commercially fish, and I'm out on the boat on the ship, and my captain's a photographer, one of them, and I'm in the galley, so I'm always below the wheelhouse. And but we have a phone because sometimes I need to talk to the boss, and he calls me whenever he sees something cool like whales, or because he knows I really dig it. And it's kind of neat to share those things. So he calls me, he goes, "You got to run up here quick." And I put everything on simmer, and I run up there. Yeah. And he's like, he points to this little owl on the bow, and he says he's been taking pictures of it, which he shared with me too, which is incredible. And so this was the day of the first year, the anniversary of Scott's death.
Mm,
And he didn't know that. And he says, and my captain's name is Scott, coincidentally too. And he said, in all my years fishing, I have never seen an owl this far from shore and never on the bow.
yeah.
And I was like, in my head, I didn't share with him because I didn't want to totally freak him out. I just was thinking, wow, I wonder, that's a sign from Scott. I mean, I didn't necessarily believe it's Scott, but it was a check-in that I'm okay. Here I am. And continue to see signs like that.
Yeah.
I think if a person's open to it, because I don't really believe in coincidences. I just think it makes life easier, and it gives you, you know, my mom's died last year at a nice old age, so it's a beautiful thing for her to have lived as long as she did, and we all miss her tremendously. But her birthday is August 5th, and my
Oh,
book was, I know, it's just a few days ago. And so my book, I've been waiting and waiting for Amazon to say your book is available on Amazon. And it came on August 5th. And I was like, "Oh, thanks, Mom." Mom's proud. And
yeah.
just I that's what I like to believe. So I'm with your wife on these things.
Well, and I got to the point very quickly of also being with my wife on these things because I realized something. I realized that and I didn't come to the realization, but through a lot of searching and reading and investigating, I came to the realization that, we create the reality that we live in. And if I want to live in a reality where, you know, like everything is random and we're just flying off to some random point that's meaningless, I can live in that reality. Or I can live in the reality that says, there are miracles and signs and serendipitous things happening all around me. And, it's kind of like, which world do I choose to live in? Whether I can prove it or not is irrelevant because it's what world do I choose to live in? And it sounds like you're doing the same thing. And
Mm-hmm.
and that's a happier world, that's a
It
happier
is.
world. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. How did you get into your occupation? And please tell people what that is. I'm curious about the story on this.
I commercially fish. I'm a commercial fisherwoman, and I appreciate that you're watching some of my posts because I'm new to posting on Instagram. And we're just having a lot of fun with it. We're it's not perfect, but we're having fun. Me and my crew in the galley. So anyways, I started in my 20s back in 87. So
Wow,
long time ago.
cool.
I know I have to keep doing the math. Like, is it really 36 years? Oh my God, am I that old? Wait a minute. Let me check. Let me check again. It can't be that long. It's just trippy when you get older. But anyways, I dropped out of college because of binge drinking, because of my partying, and
Yeah.
I stopped going to class, and so I dropped out. And I really had no direction. I just went to go play soccer, basically, and So my friend was fishing and she said, "Hey, Call, you should come join us. It's a lot of fun." And back then, nobody knew what commercial fishing was, right? And I'm always up for an adventure. Even today, it's part of my essence and who I am. So I said, "Yeah, sign me up. I'm on board." And I got a job, and the rest is history. It was perfect for me at the time. I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back now, I see, because back then there's no Wi-Fi. No one, my parents, nobody knew. I didn't even know what I was getting into. It was a new industry, quite honestly, in the U.S.,
Yeah.
the pollock industry, and so we were the pioneers of that industry. So it was a great escape. I was perfectly, because I told myself I was never getting married or having kids. I could, it was a safe container for me because I didn't have to watch my friends over here on land starting their families, having their weddings. And so it was perfect for me. And then I'd get off the boat and I'd go travel and do my thing because I didn't have any obligations and I had some money in the bank. And my married friends would say, "We want your life." And I'm thinking, "I want your life." So it's kind of funny how you just never, it's hard to find joy in what you're doing,
Wow.
right?
I think I saw, so my only frame of reference is being a huge Deadliest catch fan for years. And I
Mm.
saw that you made a post in Dutch Harbor. I'm like, oh, Dutch Harbor. Yeah, but what are you on the Bering Sea? Like, cause that looks,
Wait,
ooh,
yeah, it can get gnarly
yeah,
very fast.
it
Yeah.
looks
That's where
gnarly.
we are. That's where we
Holy
are.
crap.
Yeah, so I did crabfish once, by the way. I kind of am proud of that, so I have to share it. The first time I wanted to buy a house, I was trying to make a little more money, so my friend said, "Come over here and crabfish," and it was like November.
Uh-huh.
And it was the scariest month of my life, and probably the month I made the least money too, by the way. Not every crab boat produces a huge paycheck. I worked the hardest for sure, and I thought I was going to die every second I was there. So I never went back to crabfish. And I give those guys
Wow.
a ton of respect for what they do. They are, uh, yeah, it's just really, those kinds of things get in your blood. I think there's adrenaline about the danger. I hate to say it, I'm sure women can crab fish, but for me, it's too physically demanding. And so if I were a guy, I probably would have loved it. But as a woman, I wanted to just make their lattes, and I was in the galley cooking, and I was totally cool with that. Like, you guys
Yeah.
can be wet and cold and miserable out there. I'll be sitting here sipping my latte, waiting
Yeah.
for you to
Yeah.
come in to eat lunch. Oh, and by the way, I'm just going to be hanging on
Yeah.
here, you know,
Ah!
making sure lunch doesn't land on the deck. That's my job.
Yeah. Oh my
It's
gosh. That
really
is so,
intense.
I've never spoken to anyone that's ever done that. I've been, a little less so now because I don't get to watch a lot of TV with so many kids, but I was obsessed with those various shows over the years because the danger. Like I could, I'd hold my breath watching this stuff, and I can't even imagine what it's like to be on those boats. And so tell us about your book, Colleen. What was the start? Why did you write it? Like what can people expect from reading it?
Yeah, thanks. I've always liked to write. I mean, well, probably because I was stuck on a ship for many years with sometimes nothing to do before TV. um, was accessible. Anyways, I started writing on Substack because I wanted a place to put my writing other than just a blog. And so I joined a program with a guy there who's a really good writer, and he had us start with a pain point in life. And so
Mm,
for me, it was Scott's death. And I started really writing as much as I could descriptively about that experience. And it was very emotional for me. And the feedback I got from the people in my group also writing was really positive. People wanted, even though it was very vulnerable things I was sharing, the feedback was huge, and people started sharing their experience with suicide, whether it was they tried to die by suicide themselves or their brother killed himself or whatever. So I realized, wow, this is really something people want to talk about. And And I had made a promise to Scott in my grief journey that I would do something in life. I didn't know what it was at the time, to make a change, to make a difference, to try to bring awareness around suicide. And so just bit by bit, I wrote more articles, and I thought, maybe I should write a book. And the opportunity came up with She Rises Publishing to help me through that book writing process. And so I kind of took parts of my writing on Substack, and that's part of my book as well. I took some of those things I wrote and put them in the book. But and then I thought, wow, this could be a really good platform in which to share, like to get on podcasts and talk about my book and talk about suicide and talk about drinking, and share that, by the way, there is a 988 helpline for anyone who has suicide ideation or a crisis going on. You can text or call anytime in the US. And I always like to throw that plug in, as well as a 9881 helpline for veterans, because veterans are really struggling as well. And so I decided that, wow, okay, I think I found my lane, like where I'm supposed to go with my promise to Scott, and how I can hopefully make a difference, keeping his name alive, finding the silver lining in his death, because I feel like it's such a tragic ending to his story, but on the flip side, it's such a beautiful beginning to how his death maybe can touch others.
Yeah.
And so that's my mission. That's why I'm here, honestly. That's why I'm trying to grow my Instagram. I really don't like it. To be honest, I'm not a social media person. I think there's a lot about social media that's not healthy, but I realize it's a necessity in our day and age, and you have to do it. So, I mean, you don't have to do it, but if you want to make an impact, it's part of the program. So get on board,
Yeah.
Colleen.
I remember my wife was sitting in bed next to me one day and she said, "Dude, you've got to get on social media." And I was like, "I don't like social media. Like I feel so ingenuine, with what I'm doing, and and then there's the big influencers, and I just I just cringe when I watch their stuff, and that was actually how this podcast came about, because I knew how to do podcasting. I had the setup already. I said, well, you know what? I'll just let other people create the content for me. And that's kind of what I started doing. And I'll snip the hell out of this when we're done with it and put out a bunch of cool shorts, and all that. So, yeah, that was my social media story. And, I mean, I'm a baby on social media, but whatever. I'm having a good time doing it. And I'm, so what's the substance of the book? Obviously, we've talked a lot about your life, but what can people expect by buying your book? What will they read about?
Well, the substance, I wanted it to be self-reflective for the reader or the listener.
Ooh.
Yeah, so because my story maybe has some interesting aspects to whoever reads it or listens, but usually we always are what's that word? When we're listening to someone talk, we're already thinking about how we want to answer. So we are all self-absorbed. So I wanted my book to be about, when people are reading it and hearing what I'm saying, they might be going, "Oh, how does that, oh, I can relate with that," or so I'm always asking questions throughout it to just kind of like have a conversation. And it definitely is a memoir. It's about my experience with binge drinking. And I like to offer without judgment. I'm not preaching to anyone that alcohol is the devil. It's just always throughout it is, how is it working for you with your behavior? And I believe that there is a story beneath the behavior. So I just offer suggestions on, if you're someone that is questioning your behavior and it's not showing up for you the way you're not showing up for you the way you want to in the world, how can you start shifting your
Yeah.
behavior?
I love that. I love. I did none of that in my book. I was just like, the self here. I'm just gonna tell my story, right? But isn't that characteristic of every one of us, that we've got that sort of self-centered side, that everything we hear, everything we see, it's always being filtered through the "how does this affect me" lens. And I think, you had talked about the episode that I did with my sponsor and kind of getting a little feel for the 12-step process. And
Oh yeah.
the reason that that works so well, a number of reasons. A, the process is, it's kind of like cognitive behavioral therapy. It retrains your brain. We get a
Mm-hmm.
community, but the underlying foundation of all of that is that, hey, you as an alcoholic, you are a self-centered person, and that self-centeredness is going to kill you. So we have to shift our thoughts to other people as often as we possibly can, which is really the 12th step in sponsoring. And so you really, like, you kind of hit the nail on the head. You called it self-absorption, but man, that is so characteristic of me, and at least in my experience, alcoholics and addicts specifically. It's wild, totally wild.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I think all of us can really. I mean, if you think about the conversations you have with people who maybe even aren't addicts, a lot of times they won't let you like I'm really working hard on my communication, and it's retraining and my listening skills. So it's retraining to really listen, because we automatically want, because we're so excited maybe sometimes to share what we have to share, we stop listening to what the other person's saying because we're thinking, oh, I want to share this, and when can I share it, and almost even running over someone because you feel you have to share what you want to share like now, and you don't let the person finish. So I think a
Mm.
lot of it for me in my watching my behavior of how I communicate, it is retraining, and it's, you're not going to get it right all the time, and but it's just trying to communicate better and listen better.
Yeah, that's a huge skill. I don't know how it came about, but early on in my 20s, I read the book "How to Win Friends and Influence People" by Dale Carnegie, which is like it's a hugely famous book.
Mhm.
Um, and but it's a master class in teaching you what's important to people. And I'll spoil it for a lot of people who have never read the book. The thing all of us want more than anything else is appreciation. So the line is, be hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise. And that if you find a way to speak to people by not talking about what we want, but by talking about how they can get what they want by helping you get what you want, it is my whole world changed. I mean, I still screwed up my life more than I can, even articulate really. But yeah, man, such a cool process to learn what makes people tick, and what makes me tick, so that I can be a better listener, be a better communicator. I love that so much, Colleen. And
Thanks.
I'm curious, how can people get in contact with you? Like, if somebody is like, "Whoa, this lady's cool as shit," and you're cool as shit. I'm so glad I had you on the
Thanks.
podcast, right? Like, how can
You're cool
people
as shit too, by the way.
how can
Well,
people
I'm pretty
contact you?
basic. Oh, thank you. It's my book is life, or my website is lifebeyondthebinge.com. And if you want to email me like I did with you after I heard you speak on Kevin's
Oh yeah, yeah.
podcast.
Kevin
Yeah,
Lanning. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Reswell.
because I'm gonna be a guest on his in December. So I was like listening to
Oh
his,
hell yeah.
yeah.
He's
And
cool.
so yeah, so I really enjoyed that conversation you had. But so I reached out to you. I found you. I was like, I want to read your book and so be supportive, because I know what it's like to try, I'm trying to build my, well, I don't know about for you, but I like to give those snippets of, hi, I heard you and that was great. And I hope you can reach out to me at Colleen at lifebeyondthebinge.com if anyone wants to just say, hey, what's up?
Yeah. Oh man. That's awesome. Colleen, thank you so much for being here. I hope your book is just such a home run and touches so many people's lives. I know that it's going to
Oh,
be
thank
awesome.
you. Well,
Yeah.
thank you. It was a pleasure to
Yeah.
write it, and life changing, right?
Yeah, totally. And I'm going to ask you one more question. How did it change your life to write that? Like, what was your internal experience as you were going through that?
Well, it was hard, especially I'm so vulnerable with what I shared because I was never going to talk about it again ever in life. And so now I put it in my book. So, it's really like letting go of fear and just
Mm,
putting it all out there. And then at the end of the day, I realized my story wasn't true and that I am lovable. And I've been able to hug that 19-year-old and embrace her with love and, just I feels bad that she had to go through everything she did, but at the end of the day, I was talking to my dad and he read it. I was like, "Oh my God, you read my book." He's like, "Of course." And those are the people you're like the most afraid of reading. And it was really sweet because he said he noticed a change. He and my mom noticed a change in my behavior around them, and they thought
Mm.
it was something else, but they never asked me about it. And he says he wished he had. So it was really beautiful for me to hear that and say, "Dad, we just move forward." And by the way, if I hadn't have gone through everything I had, just like you, with all your, like you said, your fucked upness life, you know, I wouldn't be who I am today. And I wouldn't have I wouldn't have the authority to talk about this, just like you. Like, you've gone through some shit and look at where you're at, right? I mean, serious. You've said it too. So,
Yeah, no,
right?
it's absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Yeah. And look at it, talk about being a beacon of hope for people, right? We each are in different ways, and that's beautiful. And so you couldn't be an authority on it if you hadn't lived through it.
Oh man, what a pleasure chatting with you, Colleen. Do me a favor, stick around after I hit the outro so we can
Okay.
chat just a little bit, okay? But thank you so much for being here. I
Yeah.
really, really
Oh,
appreciate
thank
it.
you for having me. I had so much fun.
Awesome. And for anyone listening, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever, wherever the heck you're listening, do me a favor, leave a review. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe, like, do all those things that the influencers are supposed to ask you to do. I just do it because people tell me I'm supposed to do it. Anyhow, we're going to get the hell out of here. My name's Austin. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch y'all later. Bye-bye.